So, a couple years back, I made a top 20 list of my favorite Super Nintendo games of all time. It was a really good list, and did phenomenally well, to which I am incredibly grateful for, as it really boosted my channel. So thanks to all of you lovely people, haha! I don't know. However, that was 3 years ago now, believe it or not, and while my opinion hasn't changed that much, I thought it would be fun to redo the list for several reasons. Number one, I'm better at this now, so it will hopefully be better quality than the last one. Number two, my opinion has changed slightly, I would say. Number 3, it makes sense practically as it could potentially get me a bunch of views. Yeah, whoring myself out. Number 4, there were several people who were displeased and didn't see it as an objective list. Like opinions on games can be objective anyway, you dummies. Anyway, I will say that I could have taken a more objective approach, and I think I'm going to take that approach with this list right here. So, given all of that, here's 20 amazing Super NES games in a top 20 list of some sort for some reason. Okay, seriously. Think of this as my opinion on an objective list. In other words, not necessarily what I think is the best or what are my favorites, but what I think is considered the best based on popular opinion or reviews or just what a lot of people tend to gravitate towards. Or you could just default back to the whole, top 20 list of some sort for some reason. Anyway, I love these games, so enough of this rambly crap, and let's get the nostalgia flowing, everybody. Number 20, Star Fox. Do a barrel roll! Not only is Star Fox one of the greatest rail shooters of all time, but it completely revolutionized the genre and was definitely, in 1993, a defining moment in the Super Nintendo's life. Although a bit dated and primitive looking by today's standards, the 3D polygonal graphics, courtesy of the newly developed Super FX chip, really pushed the limits of what the console was capable of that time. However, it wasn't just Star Fox's impressive graphics that made the game great. Its fast-paced and exciting gameplay, impressive and varied levels, epically badass soundtrack, and the sheer fun and replayability of it really makes it stand out as one of the greatest Super Nintendo games, as well as one of the strongest titles of the series. Number 19, Mega Man X. The first of the X series, Mega Man X really took the Blue Bomber to new levels of fun, frenzied action. Complete with the new X design and the introduction of characters like Zero, as well as brand new features from the first 6 games, Mega Man X is a huge upgrade from its NES predecessors. With new abilities like being able to cling and bounce off walls, dashing along the ground, and loads of other unlockable armor, Mega Man X is the complete package. It, along with its 2 sequels, are also some of the best looking and most fun games in the series. Number 18, Secret of Mana. Few action RPGs have stood the test of time and innovated the genre as much as Secret of Mana. It was developed as a continuation of the Final Fantasy Adventure series for the Game Boy, and was originally intended to be a much larger game to be released on the SNES CD add-on. After the add-on failed to materialize, however, it was designed as an original Super NES game. And despite the team having to cut a lot from the original game, it is still a gorgeous, sprawling adventure. Its real-time battle system is a great combination of more direct hack and slash meets traditional RPG elements, like being able to cast magic spells and level up. It's also one of the few games compatible with the Super NES's multitap, which, given my own personal experience playing this with 2 other people in recent years, is the absolute definitive way to experience this game. The gorgeous environments, fun gameplay, atmospheric soundtrack, and epic storyline will encapsulate players both old and new, and make Secret of Mana one of the very best RPGs on the console. Number 17, Super Mario Kart. If you're looking for the greatest racing game on the Super Nintendo, look no further than the original Super Mario Kart. While perhaps seen as a bit dated by today's standards, Super Mario Kart really was way ahead of the competition when it was released in 1992. Featuring 8 playable characters, 20 tracks, and a slew of items to mix things up, Super Mario Kart really took racing games to a whole new level with addictive and competitive gameplay. Whether it's tackling one of the cups or trying to burst a buddy's balloon in battle mode, the game is crazy addictive and just plain fun. And look, to quell any future debate, yes, Koopa Troopa is the best character. Number 16, Zombies Ate My Neighbors. When it comes to fun couch co-op, few games on the Super Nintendo can compare to Zombies Ate My Neighbors. I mean, what could be better than running around town trying to save people from hordes of zombies and other monsters armed with nothing but a water gun or a can of soda? Seriously, this game is super action-packed and really fun, although very challenging at times. With 48 levels packed with all kinds of different monsters, environments, and challenges, the game is both rich and very addictive. Sporting one of the goofiest yet unique art styles of any game on the console that's a tongue-in-cheek homage to classic horror and sci-fi films, in an appropriately zany and astounding soundtrack, Zombies Ate My Neighbors is certainly one of the most fun and original games on the platform. Number 15, Turtles in Time. When it comes to beat-em-ups, Turtles in Time is not only hands down the greatest of the genre on the Super NES, but I would dare say the greatest beat-em-up of all time. Yes, I dare say that. And when it comes to console ports of famous arcade titles, the result is often lackluster, to say the least. Not at all the case with Turtles in Time. Although the game isn't quite as long as the original arcade version, nor quite as vibrant, Turtles in Time is still a fun and fast-paced game that never disappoints. The action is intense, and in some ways superior to the arcade version, and although yes, it looks better in some ways on arcade, Turtles in Time takes full advantage of the Super NES's graphics and Mode 7, as well as sporting an absolutely killer soundtrack. Although the game is a bit short, it's highly replayable and an absolute blast to play with a friend, especially with pizza for extra pizza power! Number 14, Final Fantasy IV. For many people, Final Fantasy IV was their introduction to JRPGs. It really embodies the best of the classic Dungeons & Dragons formula that JRPGs are commonly known for, but without leaning too heavily on cliches and retaining its own unique style and feel. Final Fantasy IV could arguably be seen as the first true epic JRPG, with a varied cast of characters whose developments are intriguing and make you feel for their struggles. There are some truly emotional moments in this game which, for being one of the first Super NES games, is very impressive, given the now primitive graphics. That said, the game still looks really good, and the world feels really big and fleshed out. Final Fantasy IV is one of the strongest RPGs on the console, and one of the best entries of the franchise. Number 13, Kirby Superstar. Packed with a load of different games in one cartridge, Kirby Superstar is a menagerie of fun. It features 4 separate adventure modes, including Spring Breeze, which is a remake of the very first Kirby game, Dyna Blade, the elaborate Great Cave Offensive, and Revenge of Meta Knight. Each of these games is a different adventure and also includes a 2-player option, which allows the second player to play as one of the enemies Kirby swallows. With lots of other different modes, such as the frantic gourmet race and the arena, there's tons of replay value packed in one cartridge. The colorful visuals and great soundtrack only further enhance the experience, and make it, to many people including myself, the definitive Kirby game. Number 12, Super Mario AllStars. When it comes to remakes, not only does Super Mario AllStars deliver on breathing new life into 4 classic Mario titles, but in many ways it surpasses the originals. The colorful graphics and warm sound really enhance the games, giving them an atmosphere that is unique to these versions while retaining the core of what made the NES games so great. The addition of save features and some slight tweaking of the game physics makes all 3 games a bit more accessible to casual players, and all 3 games look, sound, and feel more polished. On a personal note, these versions of the first few Mario titles were my very first introduction to both the series and really gaming as a whole, so the nostalgia factor here is definitely there for both myself and many other gamers, and so yeah, don't mind me if there's some personal bias there. Number 11, Final Fantasy VI. Considered by many to be the crown jewel of the JRPGs for the Super NES, Final Fantasy VI is a stunning achievement of great storytelling, epic battles, and more polished mechanics than previous entries in the series, as well as being totally unique in tone and feel. Even amongst the many RPGs that followed in the wake of Final Fantasy VI, few have been able to really live up to the grand scale and the very unique world that was created. The game goes through a plethora of different environments, whether it's fighting monsters in the caves of Narshe, facing beasts in a forest, or even fighting a ghost train or singing a gorgeous opera. Final Fantasy VI is well-rounded with great visuals, fun and engaging battle mechanics, and some of the most beautiful music of the entire series. Number 10, Super Castlevania IV. In terms of creepy aesthetics, dark, atmospheric music, and just the right amount of challenge, you can't get much better than Super Castlevania IV. Incorporating elements from the previous entries on the NES, and serving as a soft remake of the first. The fourth entry in Konami's Castlevania series is perhaps the strongest of the classic Castlevania games. With some of the most impressive looking stage design from the early Super NES library, utilizing the system's Mode 7 technology to its fullest, and expanding upon the mechanics with more range of movement, items, and abilities, Super Castlevania IV is one of the best examples of a franchise taking the big leap into the next generation. Whether it's the bigger and crazier boss fights, to the epic soundtrack and its deeper level of immersion, the game truly impresses and holds up remarkably well by modern standards. Number 9, Donkey Kong Country. Needless to say, people went completely ape when this game was released. Or maybe they went bananas. Haha, you thought I wasn't gonna put puns in this video. Think again. As the first proper reboot of a Nintendo franchise, Donkey Kong Country is perhaps the most well-executed, and indeed, most enduring of Nintendo's franchises. Everything from the accessible yet challenging platforming mechanics to the gorgeous music makes the game super addicting. Visually, Rare really took this game to the next level with its pre-rendered 3D sprite work, and the colorful, layered visuals really pop. As one of the best-selling games on the console, it's really hard to argue this game's success and enduring legacy as one of the greatest platformers of all time. It's Donkey Kong Country, what else do you want me to say about it? Number 8. Earthbound. Perhaps the most bizarre game on the list. Earthbound barely made a splash when it was first released, but has since garnered a very large and rabid following, myself included. This game is just bonkers, with a unique story set in a contemporary setting which was totally unique for its time, weird, zany music, a super original art style and unique characters, enemies, and NPCs. Earthbound is a hodgepodge of different weird elements all thrown into one cartridge. Perhaps the great strength of Earthbound, though, is in its writing and its constantly shifting tone and settings. You get lots of really funny moments, emotional scenes, and one of the very darkest final bosses in all of video games. As the brainchild of famed writer Shigesato Itoi and embodying his unique personality, Earthbound's quirky, ethereal nature really sets it apart from everything else and makes it one of the greatest games on the Super NES. Number 7, Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island. No other game on the Super NES feels cozier than the charming, hand-drawn look of Yoshi's Island. As the first proper Yoshi game, it introduced many of the now staple mechanics that has both set it apart from previous Mario platformers and has defined the series since its release. Yoshi's Island's art style was totally unique for its time, and is one of my personal favorites of the whole Super NES library. Featuring a unique story about the origins of the Mario Brothers, and really expanding upon the Yoshi's Island setting that was created in Super Mario World, Yoshi's Island feels completely fresh and new, but at the same time incorporates elements of the core gameplay that made the Mario series so addictive. Don't let the cutesy visuals, cozy music, and happy-go-lucky feel of the game fool you, however. Yoshi's Island is full of challenges, and in particular, lots of secrets and collectibles that make the game both very rich and super replayable. Hands down, one of the very best platformers on the console. Number 6. Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Kong Quest. While the original Donkey Kong Country was unquestionably the most groundbreaking of the original Donkey Kong Country games, it's really Diddy's Kong Quest that is the peak of the trilogy on the SNES. Featuring more levels, challenges, and what many would agree to be a superior aesthetic and the inclusion of the fantastic Dixie Kong, Donkey Kong Country 2 is an upgrade from its predecessor in almost every way. The level design is some of the very best that Rare has ever done. The atmosphere is really incredible, and oddly dark throughout, and the soundtrack is absolutely fantastic, and a stunning achievement on its own. The game also sports its own unique theme with the whole pirate aesthetic, which, coupled by the stellar soundtrack, gives it its own unique style and feel. For many, including myself, this was their introduction to the series, and remains near the top of the very best of the Super Nintendo library. Number 5. Super Mario RPG, Legend of the Seven Stars. So, this was my original number 1 game on my previous list, and being totally honest here, it's still my favorite. That said, if I'm trying to be more objective with this list, and remove those rose-tinted nostalgia glasses for a moment, I can acknowledge that yes, it is an absolutely amazing game, and I still think belongs among the top tier of Super Nintendo games, but perhaps it's not at the very top. That said, Super Mario RPG is still a crowning achievement for the console, as its pre-rendered graphics still look great, the soundtrack's still incredibly catchy, and the story, well, stellar. stellar, 7 stars, anyway. When it comes to RPGs, Super Mario RPG is really the perfect gateway to the genre for the uninitiated. Sporting the classic Mario aesthetic and incorporating some of those mechanics into the RPG format, with the whole time hits mechanic, Super Mario RPG is the perfect blend of the classic Mario platformer and the epic RPG from this golden era. Square and Nintendo's collaboration resulted in not only one of the greatest Super NES games, but also truly being a game that could stand up to some of the very best Mario and Square RPG titles since its release, Final Fantasy included, in my opinion. Super Mario RPG was the perfect swan song for the latter part of the Super NES's life, and remains to this day one of the very best games on the console. Number 4, The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. Expecting this one at number 1, I assume. Look, to be honest, there comes a point with any list like this, where the top few games become like splitting hairs. A Link to the Past is, perhaps more than any other game on this list, often ranked as the number 1 greatest Super Nintendo game. It even won the tournament I held on the channel. While I think it is most certainly worthy of that honor, I feel that any of the other games that follow it on my list are just as worthy. Yes, I'm being more objective with this list, but I personally feel that it really shares that top spot with a few other games. That being said, I absolutely adore A Link to the Past, and it is truly one of the very best games on the console. Featuring both a dark and light world, a plethora of dungeons, and tons of items, weapons, secrets, and loads more exploration than the first few games of the series, A Link to the Past really set the gold standard for the rest of the Zelda series moving forward. And indeed, while it's arguable some games in the series have surpassed A Link to the Past's greatness, there is no question that those games are indebted to it. Everything from the epic storytelling, the incredible music, the intuitive controls, and, for its time, grand scale make A Link to the Past, in some ways, the definitive Zelda title. Number 3, Chrono Trigger. The Super Nintendo is considered one of the greatest harbingers of classic RPGs. Several, such as Final Fantasy VI and IV, Secret of Mana, all of which were previously on this list, and games like Breath of Fire and Super Mario RPG, are considered among the greatest games of all time. But perhaps no other RPG on the Super NES is grander, or indeed, has stood the test of time better than Chrono Trigger. Assembled by a dream team comprising of developers from both Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest, Chrono Trigger is the very pinnacle of incredible storytelling, excellent pacing, and grand-scale adventure. I mean, who doesn't love a good time travel story? The characters are all well-developed and lovable, even Chrono, the silent protagonist. The environments are varied and unique, and the game is just, well, epic, or epoch, whatever you want to say. I have played this game many times, and even on my most recent playthrough, I was struck by how well paced the game is, and how many directions the game pulls you in such short spans of time. The world feels fully fleshed out, the scale grand, and there are some truly emotional moments that stick with you. Never does Chrono Trigger feel bogged down by too much grinding or repetitive gameplay. It feels fresh, from the unique story to the battle mechanics, which incorporate a tech system that feels both streamlined and perfectly balanced in difficulty. Aesthetically, it's gorgeous and sports an incredible atmospheric soundtrack, which just happens to be my personal favorite video game soundtrack of all time. Chrono Trigger is a masterpiece that, even over 25 years later, still remains relevant. Hey, now re-release it, Square Enix, you Number 2, Super Mario World. As one of the launch titles of the Super Nintendo, Super Mario World was many people's introduction to new 16-bit greatness. Seriously, it's Super Mario World. Do I really need to explain this one? Super Mario World was, at the time, the biggest Mario game yet, featuring upgraded graphics, new abilities, and loads of new areas and secrets to explore. Super Mario World really perfected what the previous 3 entries had done on the NES. The game is just richer, looks more colorful, and feels more open and bigger than its predecessors. With a ton of hidden levels, little nooks and crannies to search and explore, and the addition of one of the greatest sidekicks in gaming, yeah, y'all know him, Yoshi, Super Mario World just feels like a huge upgrade from the NES days. The music is bouncy and fun, the controls super intuitive, and the game is quite simply so much damn fun. Like, come on, it is just so much freaking fun. And so replayable. Super Mario World is, without question, one of the strongest platformers on the console, and I would even argue of all time, and still holds up as one of the greatest Mario games. Before we get to my number 1 pick, here are some honorable mentions of some other amazing Super Nintendo games that didn't quite make the list. Number 1, Super Metroid. When I go back to the Super NES library, and I think of all the great games that defined my childhood, games like Super Mario World, Donkey Kong Country, Chrono Trigger, and many, many more, it's hard not to, on some level, look at them through a nostalgic lens. What about these games makes them so great, and how, possibly, could I single out one game to rise above the rest? One that really defines what the Super Nintendo is all about, and has left an unsurpassed legacy. Well, whether surprising or not, I found while creating this list that perhaps no other game came up more, nor indeed do I believe deserves to be crowned at number 1 more, than Super Metroid. So why Super Metroid? Super Metroid embodies what, in my view, is the very best qualities of the Super Nintendo. Graphically, it is one of the very best looking games on the entire console. Sure, at the time, pre-rendered games like Donkey Kong Country and Super Mario RPG might have looked way more advanced, but by modern standards, Super Metroid holds up remarkably well, and given the aesthetics of modern indie titles, I would argue set the standard for what a lot of those modern games look like today. And speaking of that, Super Metroid is single-handedly responsible for creating an entire genre, the Metroidvania. With Super Metroid's super intuitive controls, non-linear exploration, backtracking, intense boss fights, and, years later, speedrunning prowess, it set the benchmark for future games and has given birth to an incredibly successful gaming formula. All that aside, Super Metroid is just a damn good game. With lots of intense action, tons of exploration, and lots of items to collect and secrets to find, Super Metroid's soundtrack is one of the very best on the console, and its atmospheric, retro sci-fi feel and kind of creepiness evoke real emotional responses in the player. Whether it's exploring the dark, ambient underbelly of Norfair, or the high-octane battles against bosses like Ridley, the soundtrack really immerses you and just adds to that dark, isolated feeling. Super Metroid is a one-of-a-kind gem, and, I would argue, the very best Super Nintendo game. Whew! And that's my list, everybody. I hope you all enjoyed this trip down memory lane with me. The Super NES is truly one of the greatest gaming consoles of all time, and my personal favorite. I mean, I would say so. This is the second top 20 I've made. With such a rich library, this list could have easily been twice the size. But for now, this is it for me. Don't like my list? Well, I don't really care. I'm just kidding. Well, What games do you think are worthy of the top 20? If you enjoyed... What games do you think are worthy of the top 20? If you enjoyed this... If you enjoyed this list, please give me a like and subscribe if you want more content like this. Or hey, if somehow you haven't seen my original Super NES Top 20 and you want a closer look at my personal favorites, check that out too. It'll be right at the end of this video. I don't know, anything else I can shill? I don't know, I think I probably lost everybody after my comment, so... Anyway, have a nice day everybody, and thank you for watching. There'll be some other stuff on the screen now with other videos that you can watch. So, thank you all, have a wonderful day, peace.